Think about last Christmas. Now think about the Christmas before that, and the one before that. They all blur together, don't they? Like they happened in the same month, not years apart. But when you were 8 years old, the wait between Christmases felt infinite. A full year felt like a lifetime. Summer lasted forever. A single afternoon could stretch into something enormous. You are living in the same universe, the same 24-hour days, the same 365-day years. And yet time is moving faster. Every single year. This isn't a feeling. This is something scientists can measure. And the reason it happens is one of the strangest things your brain does to you. Let's start with a number. When you are 10 years old, 1 year represents 10% of your entire life. It's a significant chunk of everything you've ever experienced. When you are 40, 1 year is just 2.5% of your life. The same 12 months. Completely different weight. In 1877, philosopher Paul Janet was the first person to write about this. He argued that we don't experience time in equal units. We experience it as a proportion of our total life lived. A year at age 10 feels 10 times longer than a year at age 50, not because the year is different, but because you are. This is called the proportional theory of time, and it explains part of what's happening, but only part. Here's something nobody tells you. In 1999, researcher Norbert Schwartz asked people to estimate how long ago various events in their lives had happened. Car accidents, first jobs, moving houses. Consistently, people placed recent events further in the past than they actually were. And distant events felt closer. A thing that happened 2 years ago felt like 5 years ago. A thing that happened 10 years ago felt like 6. Time wasn't just moving faster, it was collapsing into itself. Like a telescope folding shut. But that's still not the strangest part. Because here's where it gets strange. Your brain doesn't record every moment equally. It records novelty. Think about the last time you drove somewhere new, a city you'd never been to, a road you'd never taken. The drive felt long. You were paying attention. Every turn, every building, every sign. Your brain was filing it all away. Now think about your commute to work, the one you've done 500 times. You arrive and you can barely remember the drive. Not because nothing happened, but because your brain decided none of it was worth recording. It had seen it all before. Neuroscientist David Eagleman at Stanford University has spent years studying the relationship between memory and time perception. His conclusion is precise and unsettling. Time doesn't speed up. Memory does. When you look back on a period of your life, your brain reconstructs the duration based on how many distinct memories it stored. A week full of new experiences feels long in memory. A week of routine feels like it barely existed. This is why childhood felt so slow. Everything was new. The first time you tasted something sour, the first time you understood a joke, the first time you realized adults didn't have all the answers. Every single day contained something your brain had never processed before. Your brain was filing constantly, building a library from scratch. And when you look back, that library feels enormous, full of distinct, detailed memories, which your brain interprets as a long time. Now think about last Tuesday. What happened? Did you do anything you hadn't done before? Did you go anywhere new? Did you taste something for the first time? Have a conversation that surprised you? Probably not. And your brain recorded almost nothing. In 2005, psychologist Mark Wittmann at the Institute for Frontier Areas of Psychology in Germany ran a series of experiments measuring how people subjectively experience time. He found something that should change how you think about your entire life. People who reported higher levels of routine consistently underestimated how much time had passed. Not by a little, by significant margins. A month of sameness felt like 2 weeks. Meanwhile, people who had experienced more novel events in the same period perceived that time as longer, fuller, more lived. The brain, Wittmann concluded, uses memory density as a clock. The more memories per unit of time, the longer that time feels. The fewer memories, the faster it disappears. But there's another piece, and it might be the most unsettling of all. Your brain processes information differently as you age. When you are young, your brain is running on new hardware. Everything is fast. Neural connections are forming constantly. The world is arriving at a rate your brain can barely keep up with. This creates a subjective sense of slowness, too much information coming in too fast, like trying to read a book while someone keeps turning the pages. As you age, your brain becomes more efficient. It knows what to expect. It knows which information matters, and it filters everything else out before it even reaches your consciousness. Neuroscientist Peter Mangan at Radford University found that older adults consistently underestimate how much time has passed during a given interval. He asked subjects to estimate when 3 minutes had elapsed without looking at a clock. Young adults were nearly exact. Older adults thought 3 minutes had passed when closer to 4 or 5 minutes had actually gone by. Their internal clock was running slow, which means time was passing faster than they realized. Think about what this means. You are not imagining it. Your brain is literally processing fewer frames per second than it did when you were young. In 2023, researchers at Duke University published a study in the journal European Review measuring the rate at which images are processed by the visual nervous system. In children, the rate is high, everything is crisp, detailed, vivid. As the nervous system ages, the rate slows. The world arrives in slightly lower resolution, slightly fewer frames, and a brain receiving fewer frames per second experiences time as moving faster. This is not a metaphor, this is physics. The same way a film shot at 12 frames per second feels faster and choppier than one shot at 60 frames per second. Your life is losing frames every year. And here's the part that makes it worse. You can't feel it happening. There is no moment when you notice that the world arrived in slightly lower resolution today than it did yesterday. No alarm, no warning. It just happens, slowly, over decades, until one day you look up and realize an entire year passed while you were looking at your phone. There is one more piece. Attention. A child experiences time slowly, partly because they are paying attention constantly. Everything is worth noticing. The texture of a sidewalk, the sound of rain on a window, the exact color of something they've never seen before. Adults stop noticing, not because they can't, but because they've decided most things aren't worth the energy. Psychologist William James wrote about this in 1890. 130 years before brain scanning existed, he described it perfectly. In youth, we may have an absolutely new experience subjectively every hour. In later life, each passing year converts some of this experience into automatic routine. Routine is the enemy of time, and most adult life is routine. Here's a number that will stay with you. The average adult makes about 35,000 decisions per day, most of them automatic, unconscious, done before the brain even registers they happened. When you were 5, almost none of your decisions were automatic. Every choice required attention. Every action required thought. Every moment was being processed consciously. That conscious processing is what made time feel thick, dense, full. Now, most of your day runs on autopilot, and autopilot doesn't leave memories. So, what can you actually do about it? The science is clear on this. The only way to slow time down is to create new memories, to put yourself in situations your brain has never processed before, to pay attention to things you would normally filter out. Psychologist Claudia Hammond, in her book Time Warped, calls this the Holiday Paradox. When you're on holiday, time feels fast in the moment, because you're busy, because you're engaged. But when you look back at the holiday, it feels long, because your brain stored hundreds of new memories. The weeks before the holiday that were full of routine, gone, compressed into almost nothing. 2 weeks of novelty can feel longer in memory than 2 months of sameness. You were 8 years old once, and a single summer afternoon could contain more felt time than an entire decade of your adult life. Not because you were wrong, but because your brain was doing something it will never quite do again at the same rate. It was seeing everything for the first time, and now it knows too much. It has seen too many sunsets, too many Monday mornings, too many meals that tasted like meals before. And every time your brain decides that something isn't worth remembering, it takes a piece of your time with it, quietly, without asking. The years aren't getting shorter. Your library of new things is. If this made you want to do something you've never done before, subscribe. Every week, we answer the questions you forgot to ask.